You're listening to the Beer Craft Beer and Brewing Podcast. Tune in every Wednesday night at 6:30 Pacific for a dose of beer and brewing banter with your hosts, Ben Holm and Andrew Ziegler.
So hop aboard for some wit and wisdom in the Pacific Northwest, because it's always beer 30 on
The Beer Craft. All right, it's Wednesday night this week on the Beer Craft. We're not just drinking beer, we're building it. So strap in, folks. We're talking recipe design.
You know that one beer you love? The one you'd bathe in if it were socially acceptable?
Well, what if you could make it yourself or something even better? We're breaking down the art of beer recipe design using three of the best tools in the biz.
Brewing classic styles for proven, inspirational base recipes.
Designing great beers for style-building wisdom straight from Ray Daniels' brain.
And a little sleuthing to clone your favorite commercial beers without breaking into the brewery.
So you're going to learn why less is more, what to do with what not to do with 17 specialty malts, and how to tell if you're designing a recipe or just making soup.
Well, this one's for everyone who's ever said, I think I could make this beer better.
And then didn't. So let's fix that, because it's time for
The Beer Craft. Well, let's make some beer.
But before we dive into the malt bills and hop schedules,
You know what time it is.
it's that beautiful bubbly moment. It's
Called
Beer 30. Oh, man. It is fantastic Wednesday. I got something cool today.
Yeah.
Well, first off, we're going to be pouring out of this beautiful pressurized growler because I think that's going to cure the Ben Spills beer on Spendy Gear problem, at least for today.
Well, unless it bubbles up.
It could happen.
Overflows.
It could happen. But I brought in a cool beer.
All right. Sounds good.
Today we're sipping on...
Yeah, what is this? What did you bring?
We're calling this... It's a little homebrew Josh and I kicked up last week. We're
Yeah.
calling it Martucci's Folly. Named, or also known as the Mailer Damon Cream Ale.
Mailer Damon.
Mailer Damon. So our good friend, Mr. Martucci, he emailed us a recipe, and it got kind of like lost in Google land, and it showed back up 6 months later.
Wow.
And so we milled it for him. He's like, I didn't order that. I'm like, oh, that's really weird, because the Mailer Damon says you did. So we were kind of left with a beer, like a sack of grains that had been milled up and mixed, and
you
like,
got to use it.
what are we gonna do? So
It's
we
a great excuse.
Yeah, so we put on our thinking caps and we added a bit to it and made a 10-gallon batch of today's beer. So let's pour that, shall we?
Do it. Okay. Oh my. It's very nice. Well, you almost spilled. All right. Do this.
Well, I've got a lot of foam on mine, but you know, it had to get up all into the hardware there, so I think I'll drink some bubbles.
Had to get all up in there.
Yeah. First pour is always the worst pour, right?
Not necessarily. Nice looking beer.
Yeah, a little cream.
Great color.
Cheers, buddy.
A little darky. Cheers. Oh, we do need a utility napkin.
Oh, we did dribble a little bit, didn't we? But that's
The growler dribbled, Ben.
That's a far smaller puddle than the one I'm usually making.
The growler did the dribbling instead of you today.
Yeah.
Cool. No, this is good. This is good. Nice cream ale. Got a good mouthfeel to it. I love that. Quaffable. I mean, I guess.
Very beer flavored beer. Turns out that's my favorite one. I like my beer to taste like beer. If it tastes like beer, I will drink it. Really easy.
Yeah, that's good.
Goddamn easy. It's too easy to drink.
Easy.
This is one of those. I think cream ales are one of those beers. Like every time we brew, like, oh, we'll brew twice as much next time.
All right.
And it turns out, like, we've pushed, you know, my little homebrew system. I pushed to 20 gallons for this beer, doing like a partial mash with a big, like a 20-gallon kettle. So I was able to add the extracts in, and then we basically it's a partial volume, partial mash, 20-gallon batch.
Right.
Adding water in the fermenter and whatnot.
Right.
20 gallons of cream ale.
Why not?
We're going to have beer all summer long. Fuck that. Turns out we drink it just as fast at 20 gallons as we did at 5 gallons, and we just got way less done. But fun beers.
You're not drinking this at work, are you?
Quality control,
Quality
and
control
quality
calls for
assurance
it?
are full-time jobs in larger organizations. So we are a very small team. We all have to wear a lot of different hats, from
Right.
research and development to QA/QC to brew day practicalities. We have to
Right,
sit and
right,
investigate
right.
all these things.
You know, if you have yourself a brewer
so-
shirt, if you have a brewer button-up shirt, get yourself a name tag that goes on the front and name yourself Drain.
That's right. There you go. There you go. We call I drink professionally. I drink for science. Delicious, bubbly carbonated malt
yum.
beverage with hops for science.
All about the science.
If it's between 9
You-
6,
Even you can stem.
I will drink for science.
You can stem.
Yeah, I can do it. And I don't have to be the drain.
That's for me.
There you go.
If I was in Mexico, it would be drenaje.
Drenaje.
Drenaje. Yeah.
Which means, that drain.
Drain.
That's the drain. Yeah. I'm catching up now.
Yeah.
I'm just 3 seconds behind. That's the lag phase of my brain.
Time for another beer.
Well, I started earlier today.
Oh, did
no
you?
No lie. Yeah. I rolled into the shop about 11 to grab something, and I said, fuck it, it's nice. I was kind of playing hooky. We were doing some cleanup at the house. So I rolled in the shop, grabbed something, grabbed a beer at 11.
There you go.
Yeah, and another one at
3.
2:30, and
Yeah.
it's been a success.
Sounds like my energy drinks.
right? We should call this like the Lay's potato chip beer. You just can't drink one of them. Yeah.
Can't. You got to keep drinking.
No, but it's cool. We the original grain bill that we milled up by mistake had Pilsner malt, red wheat, and wheat, and some other Cara Crystal wheat. And I think some Carapils came from that original one. And so we were looking at that going, well, what the fuck kind of beer can we make out of this? Like, it's got some wheat, a little heavier than I would typically do in a cream ale, but that style of beer made me really thirsty for especially warmer months ahead. So we added the Mountain Cream Ale kit on top. So flake corn, a little flake rice, honey malt, and then and two-row
Okay.
to this
So
beer.
is this the recipe right here?
This
that
is
he
the
sent
recipe.
you?
Yeah.
That's the OG.
Yeah. We'll put a
Mr.
link to
Martucci?
that in. Yeah, and so that's not the one Martucci sent. That is the combined effort.
This is the combined. Okay,
yeah.
got it.
Yeah. Willamette hops.
And you added
24.
2-row?
I believe we added the two-row.
2-row.
Yeah.
And the flake corn.
Mm-hmm. Flake rice.
American red wheat.
The honey malt.
That's hard red, right?
Hard red. Yeah.
Yeah, it is.
So I'm we've got a little bit of turbidity. We've got a little bit of we're not crystal clear on this, but
It's
I'm
not.
going to blame the wheat.
Yeah.
We got red wheat in there and flaked wheat, I believe.
Flaked rice.
Flaked rice.
Flaked corn, flaked rice.
Right. But Mike's res or
And the
Mr.
wheat.
Martucci. It's Mike. Okay, it's fine. Hi, Mike. How you doing, buddy? We're drinking a beer that you wrote half the recipe for. So congratulations, sir. We'll
I
make
just wonder
famous.
how he didn't miss it when he sent it.
Well, it was so we asked him, was like, hey, I got that grain bill, and he's like, I didn't send you a grain bill. I'm like, yeah, well, my Gmail says you just sent that 5 minutes ago. I was like, not it. And it was some like artifact recipe from 6 months ago just randomly respawned in my inbox, and we ground it up for him.
Yeah. He
Yeah.
processed it. Yeah.
That's why it's also
But
also
then
known
it-
as the Mailer Damon
Right. Was he?
cream ale.
Did he send it originally or try to send
He
it
sent it
originally?
6 months.
So he never followed up with it. Never
Well,
came into the shop and
No,
said
he got it, but like it got
redone.
Yeah, it
Okay.
did. Google, in its infinite wisdom, resent the email from some, like
Just
the
a-
Mailer Damon
just
just
a Google
fucked that
hiccup.
up. Fucked it up. Fucked it up for everybody. So we get to drink.
There you go.
We get to drink the Mailer Damon cream ale, or Martucci's Folly. I don't think it was. We can't really call him Martucci's Folly.
Right.
He didn't fuck it up. It wasn't him. It was the Google did it, but he's got such a great name. It's fun to say. Tasty beer though.
The Google.
The Google. I know. I got to put more beer in this glass.
I was just listening to some radio, and they were saying that, the funny way that people say things, and that's a very popular one. People say the Google.
The Google.
Yep.
Oh, really?
The Google.
I asked the Google. I always say that because there was like some joke, like it was like a Irish lady like asking her mom something. It's like, how do you blah blah blah? And I was like, I don't know. Ask the Google. You know, I was like, then that just cracked me up. When she said, ask the Google.
You got to say it that way from now on.
Yeah, ask the Google.
The Google, no.
Yeah, so I do. I say the Google. The Google.
Google it. Man, it's crazy how that became such a popular saying. Just over a company.
Good, yeah. Good
Google
branding,
it.
right?
Yep.
Yeah, Google it.
I mean, I wonder where that came from. A Google is a number?
Googleplex is.
Googleplex?
I think Google was like to look at things. I don't know. We're not getting
That's
into like
ogle.
Ogle. So yeah.
Oogle?
Googling
or
and goggling and
Goggling.
Like, yeah, and then poof, you got Google.
It used to be goggles.
So yeah, like they're watching you too.
Right. Look,
right? They've been watching. It was implied in the name that they'd be watching your activity too.
Exactly.
And like, that's how they got so big. No.
A little bit of.
I see what you did there. I did get some cool news today. Got to meet Evan from Scattered Valley Malting, new owner out there, came into the shop. So we're talking about the future of Scattered Valley Malting.
Good.
So I'm kind of excited for that. Did tell him we're going to get him out to the show here when he quits hemorrhaging time or hemorrhaging.
So tell me more. What did you hear?
So they do have some product in production in terms of like it's growing right now. So they've got not a huge, not to the not the 4 million pounds that were having grown for them 3 years ago, but they do have stuff in the dirt. Ready for harvest. That'll be ready for harvest and get into the lineup. So he does have some malt that he's trying to offload. He's trying to sell, and it's out there. It's it's not 100%, but that's what he's got to start with. But it was an encouraging conversation. It sounds like he's got a good beer centric team behind him. So
where'd the team come from?
I think he's got someone from formerly of Lagunitas I overheard. So I'm excited for some of that. Not just a bunch of bean counters thinking they want to be the next Cargill or Great Western or something bigger than their britches can allow for.
Right.
So really excited to.
It's a craft. It's a craft malt.
And
it can be big.
Well, they're doing $15,000 pound batches.
17.
Huge. It's a lot. It's a lot.
Yep. 17,000 pounds in 1 week.
One machine. Yeah. Times 9 machines.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a lot.
It is. It's a bit of grain.
It's a lot of grain.
Yeah. But it was cool to get to meet him and have a chat with him today. So I'm excited to further that conversation and bring that stuff back into the shop.
Good. I want to meet. Yeah, I want to meet him. I want to meet him.
I mentioned
talk
like,
to him.
hey, I do a podcast with one of the original, founder employees.
Yeah.
It's like, I haven't got to meet him, so he's excited too. So we'll get him out here on the show, get him in the studio when he's when he can. So we'll keep doing that.
It's busy. Well,
it's busy. Yeah.
Wednesday night shouldn't be too hard.
Shouldn't be. So it was just a little too short notice.
Right.
Got to meet him an hour before broadcast today.
We'll have to get a show for that.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah. I think we do. We'll
get
do
something put together. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, that'd be a good one.
It would be. I'm excited to do it.
Hell yeah! There's a lot of information on malting.
Fuck yeah!
It's pretty cool.
Fuck yeah!
Pretty cool from dirt to glass.
Oh, and my glass is full of beer again. So I'm gonna drink it. Yours is not. You should just pull that handle right there. If you just pull on that, it's magic. Beer comes out. Look at that fucking thing. It pours. These little pressurized growlers, I thought they were a gimmick. Mm-hmm. They do pour beautifully. And let's be honest, like all growlers are shit. If you don't drink all the beer in a single sitting, they're shit.
Yep.
Yeah. This thing will keep it bubbly all night long until I finish drinking it.
Right. And your carbonation level.
It'll keep it there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. Keep up the carbonation. It'll keep it fresher.
So
we're at 5 glasses left, huh?
We've poured 4 3/4 fills because of the foam. We might have to, I might dial the regulator down a little bit. But they're still saying 80 plus ounces left in the kegerator.
It says 5 1/4 beers left.
Oh, does it say number of beers on the
look
side?
on that side.
I never even noticed that. Oh, fucking cool. So
And
got 5 beers left.
Yep. Little beer glasses on the
That's
side of the,
cool.
of the glass.
It's there to challenge you to drink them all in there. I think so.
So all there is 6. There's 6 pints in there.
It is a 1 gallon. That is a 1 gallon. I don't know how much I actually filled because I was filling on an angle and I couldn't see.
If it's 1 gallon, it'll be what?
128.
8 beers.
Pints, yeah.
8 pints,
Yep.
roughly.
I filled it up till the 96 ounce was in the sight glass was covered and foam was coming out the top. So I just I capped it. I couldn't actually see what was going on in there because I couldn't get my head into the kegerator that far.
But it worked out.
I got 96 on an easy pour, and it'll keep it that way.
96 ounces of good beer.
I'm happy about
Cheers,
that.
Ben.
Cheers, man.
Yeah.
Cheers. I think that is gonna wrap it up for Beer 30 Day.
Pretty close.
So we're gonna fill up our glasses one more time, and then we're gonna design some beer.
Design some beers.
Stick around, folks.
Yep. We're gonna fill up the glass.
Let's do it.
Do it.
Lieutenant Dickens arrived on the scene of a reported MEA, or otherwise known as a mead eruption accident. Surely SBU dispatcher had the address wrong as he pulled into the driveway of his own home. In the home brewing system, fermentation problems are considered particularly grievous. In Burlington, the dedicated brewers who investigate these problem ferments are members of an elite squad known as the Special Brewers Unit. These were their stories presented by Northwest Brewers Supply.
Welcome back to the Beercraft Beer and Brewing Podcast. Tonight we are talking about recipe design. Like, why would you ever want to write your own recipe when it seems like you could ask the Google anytime you want what is a great cream ale recipe, and it'll spit out 500 results, or the AI now will spit out a result. And
It might not be that great.
I don't know. They put pickles in their fucking cream ale because an algorithm said so.
Maybe half and half.
So why recipe design? Why go through all the headache of writing your own recipe?
Well, some of us are in this hobby, so we can look under that hood.
Oh God, yeah.
Figure out what makes these beers the way they are.
Yeah, we are. Absolutely fantastic analogy. Like, you want to know why your car goes, like, you got to look under the hood. You got to look at what is this connected to? What do these things do? Yep. When I push this button, what fucking happens?
It all works together.
And I don't think beer's not it's not dissimilar to that. Because it is a hobby, I think a lot of us, if we're struggling with the craft, or we want to make it our own, it really is. It is about the struggle. We're fighting with, or not necessarily fighting. We're learning about the interplay between malts and hops and yeast and water.
Yeah.
And I think some of that struggle, the moment you break free from a recipe, you're not just brewing beer anymore. You're kind of brewing understanding of it, like seeing where the pieces fit and how they fall together. Because dishing that recipe, you're no longer just a brewer; you're a scientist with more drinkable results, I think.
Yeah. Well, we all think we're going to make,
or at least drinkable failures, anyways.
Yeah, we all think we're going to make the next Pliny the Elder or Hetty Topper.
We dream about doing those things. Yeah. But for every Hetty Topper out there, or Pliny the Elder, there are 5,000
different clones.
Toilet bowl beers. I'm kidding. I can't say I haven't thrown some out, but it's fewer than fewer than I would expect. Like,
right.
If I were to ask a new brewer version of me how many batches I would expect to to fuck up on, it would be a far larger number than I actually ever did.
It's good.
Yeah, I think this is a very forgiving hobby. Beer doesn't care about most of the crap we think about.
Nope. It doesn't.
So, we're kind of talking about why do it, right? A portion of what we do, when we're writing our recipes, we're still kind of, we're looking at what's been done. What have the masters done? What makes the Pliny tick? What makes Heady Topper amazing? Sierra Nevada Pale Ale. Why are these beers so good? We want to understand those things, and we kind of have to go past those. We have to break the mold, or eke out on our own and produce something uniquely our own.
Right.
And it's pretty cool.
Well, the real secret, mastering great beer design means that you got to learn from people who have already done it. Fall on their experience. Start with a good beer. It's out there maybe, and learn more about it.
Yeah.
Learn its ingredients.
So
try to find them.
So today we're going to pull our inspiration from Brewing Classic Styles by Jamil Zanishev, Designing Great Beers by Mr. Ray Daniels, and then we'll talk about it again. Clone Brews, from Tess and Mark, good folks writing that. Clone Brews, 200 recipes for commercial beers. We're going to take our inspiration from those guys today.
Crafting beer from scratch is really fun. It can be frustrating and weirdly addictive, just like brewing is supposed to be.
All right. That's a good one. That's a good one.
I'm addicted to it. I didn't even think so. I was in denial for a long time.
Well, that you were addicted to brewing, or you just thought you were just doing all this stuff and welding up 10-foot hardware in your spare time just because you thought beer was neat.
Right.
Yeah.
Nope.
Yeah, no, totally not addicted to it. Like, I didn't, buy a shop because I think it's cool and trendy. No, I'm a nerd.
I'm a nerd.
Beer nerd.
That's right. And I want to create good stuff that I want to drink. That's the biggest thing about designing your own beer is I'm gonna make the beer that I want to drink.
That's uniquely mine. Yeah. I take a lot of, we're going to talk about, getting inspiration and a lot of that stuff today, but, we're putting all the pieces together and producing the most unique beer that we can create or that we can comprehend. So my first step in that, if I'm tasked with, or I'm inspired to brew, say, a Scotch ale or a pale ale or some style specific beer, maybe it's a seasonal one. Often my first step is Brewing Classic Styles.
Yeah.
Jamil Zanishev and John Palmer. For those of you new to the scene, these guys have been at it for a while. Jamil Zanishev, this book is like 2007 publishing date. But Jamil and John Palmer, both of them have appeared on regulars on the Brewing Network, radio, another fantastic podcast we've had for, going on 20 years now. So that's 18-year-old. They're still doing it. Owner of Heretic Brewing in Southern California. John Palmer, author of How to Brew, kind of the homebrew Bible.
One of them, yeah.
Yeah. In terms of the technical aspects, he's nailing it. Fantastic book. So he put out this book in 2007, kind of a breakdown of his award-winning recipes at NHC. Like, he was like Brewer of the Year, Ninkasi Award winner, like a couple times over. Jamil's been on the block for a while.
Nice.
So I take a lot of inspiration just looking at kind of an overview of, like, say if I'm brewing a stout, he's got 3 or 4 recipes in there, and kind of the explanations of what was he thinking about when he brewed these beers. Reading that, looking at the recipes.
So kind of like searching these different recipes, to get a idea about what this guy does, or maybe what this brewery does.
Yeah, and the reason I go to the book, it's kind of I'm vetting the source.
Yeah.
It's in print. Somebody spent money to publish it
Right,
on behalf of Jameel and John, who wrote it. Somebody spends money to put it in print form, and I don't know if you know, printing a book is not fucking free. So my go-to source is, how do I vet a source? I mean, I can Google search a Scotch ale or an IPA or whatever, and I'm gonna get some sort of results. Maybe it's a homebrew forum, and I'll wade through 200 IPA recipes, and I may not really understand the IPA because anybody can publish that stuff.
Right.
So it's hard to parse the information.
Yeah. Well, it's kind of like if you ask AI to write yourself a recipe.
Right. Yeah. If the AI was trained on 10,000 knuckleheads, you're gonna get a knucklehead response.
Yep.
Yep. So I'm trying not to find knuckleheads.
Right. And then you start with the book here with the basic style.
Yeah.
And you can kind of work from there. If you start with that recipe in the book, it kind of removes a lot of the guesswork. It gives you a basic structure.
Yeah, it gives you a fantastic structure to work with.
Yep.
Absolutely. You tweak it to whatever, if it's an ingredient you can't get a hold of, that roasted from brand X, well, I can get roasted from brand Y. That's probably pretty good. That's
probably close, yeah.
Probably close enough. I'm in the ballpark.
Right.
And so those are kind of the things I do with this book is I'm always trying to get a better understanding of the style I'm trying to work with. Sometimes I'll brew it as is, but oftentimes I'm just gonna tweak it. Yeah, I'm gonna tweak it to make it a little better.
Of course.
In fact, the dry Irish stout out of this book, I tweaked. I added British chocolate malt instead of the domestic chocolate malt.
Yeah.
I kicked the ABV up a little bit, made it a little, instead of being like a
5.5.
Yeah, I wanted a 5%, 5.5% dry stout, not a 4% or 5.
Right.
Yeah. So I kicked it up a little notch. I added some British chocolate malt in there, and what I ended up with was a stout I could drink. That I drank 5 gallons of rapidly in August. Like, it became a daily drinking beer. Like, it reorganized my thinking on stouts. Like, they can be really fantastic.
Now, when you substituted the British chocolate malt, can you identify what that did?
So what I found is the Simpsons British chocolate malt just taking a look at the malt versus say like Breeze domestic chocolate. It's a much more even color range. So all of the malt looks the same. A lot of the chocolate malt is domestic stuff, or even like in a crystal malts, you get this like what is called like a salt and pepper finish.
Yeah, a lot of that is crystals.
Yeah, as the darker, the stuff that was closer to the heat source got darker than the stuff that was farther away, and they blended it down to
how they kiln it. Yeah, and if it's not high kilned, then it won't be done in a rotating vessel.
Right.
It'll be done in a kiln furnace type deal, sitting there.
And they're going to blend that down so that your aggregate result, it should be 350 Lovibond or blah blah blah. But you're going to look at some of those grains and go like, well, that's like looks like Crystal 20 in there. Like,
exactly.
Whereas some of them are black as shit. So the British chocolate malt from Simpsons, it's a uniform color.
Uniform, okay.
Yeah. We had a guy come in the shop
that's more
saying,
predictable.
A little more predictable. It is a little bit darker than like a 450 average or 425 average versus 350 average for Breeze. We had a gentleman come in
darkers.
He started raving about it. It's like all his porters and stouts he's just like switched, and oh my god, they're so much better, and blah blah blah, like just gushing about I was like, all right, we'll bring some in, we'll special order for you, we'll get it coming in. And we got some for ourselves to play with, and dude was not wrong. Like, oh buddy, like I rewrote the porter recipe, the Woolly Porter, because of it.
Nice.
I added it to that stout recipe, and Jesus is good.
Nice.
And so I get that was kind of like the tweak. I take these like baseline information. I've got do this, and tweak here. That's probably going to be a pretty good beer.
Right.
Like I can guess this is going to be a pretty good beer.
Right. That's kind of one easy thing to do is change a specialty malt like that. if you don't change it a lot, it's not gonna throw the beer off too much. So, you'll be able to find a continuing result every time you brew it if you change just a little bit.
Yeah.
Because if you change a lot, you're going to change it a lot. And you might not know what you did.
Oh, sure. If you change like too many variables, well, it could be a delicious beer, but you can't say it was this change over this change if you did
That
too
made
many
it better.
things.
Right.
Yeah, absolutely.
Another easy one like that is change one of the hops.
Oh, that's an easy one.
Yep.
Or even changing the yeast. Oh, man, that's
even easier.
Yeah, that's even. Yeah. I often do 10-gallon batches, and I will split the ferment with 2 different yeast, and I can now call them 2 different beers in the kegerator. Like, that's it. They each get their own name at that point because they're that far apart from each other.
Just because of the yeast.
Yeah, and some of them, like, some textural components that come with yeast, with the yeast expression, like, oh man, yeast is really your best friend in the brew house, folks. Like, it's doing all the heavy lifting. We are just making sugar water for yeast.
It's a living creature.
Yeah.
It's like your pet. You could care for it. You could store it. You could propagate it. You can keep it going.
Forever.
Yeah.
Just like
just like
just
sourdough.
like that Kvike episode we just
Kvike,
did. That was basically they were selecting, hand selecting for yeast culture that was fast and heat tolerant and didn't give a shit about this, that, and the other thing. And so, they grew up
raising a baby.
They grew propagated the yeast that performed that way, and poof, you've got this whole selection of yeast cultures that doesn't care about the temperature and speed. Like, it cares not. So if you haven't checked that episode out, you should do that. Episode 26. The Kvike Yeastery with the good folks out there in Norway. That was a lot of fun to do that show. That was a great show.
That was a little bit of a longer one, 1.5-hour show for us.
That's a big one. We didn't split it. So fun game, folks. If you're out there and you're grab your copy of Brewing Classic Styles, and try to outgun Jamil Zanishev on a batch. It's like challenging a chess grandmaster after reading the instructions. So that can be fun. Like, put your money where your mouth is, or your money where your beer is.
Now, can we send him a beer after we make it?
You can send me a beer. That's pretty easy. I'm at 940 South Spruce Street, like in Burlington.
That's right. And we will drink it on air.
We sure will.
Unless we're doing something on Saturday.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. So you've been at this for a while, Andrew. What's your go-to, like? When you gotta come up with something new, what you do?
Long ago, what I would do I would actually go to the homebrew stores. So
Smart guy.
That's where I would start, and they would always have the recipes that you could buy, or they even had a book of recipes you could look through, and then create your malt bill from that, and grab your hops and yeast, and go to work. But I would probably start with that, and then I would also use the internet. This is a long time ago when I do this. So there wasn't any kind of thing like AI. There wasn't that much, information on the internet. Brewer's Friend, I think, was one. And you can go and look at different people's recipes,
Sure.
which is really cool. So I would use the internet to go and glean different recipes of something that I wanted to build, and then I would just take all that knowledge, all the data from that, and look at how different beers were made. Look at their malt bills. Okay, I've got this much base grain, and I've got this much specialty malt, and specialty malt does this and this to it. So maybe I want to bump it up. Maybe I want to pull it down. I mean, there's been times where a lot of my pale ales started out. Everybody wanted a lot of recipes wanted crystal malts in it. And I remember starting with crystal malts, and I think I slowly phased them out.
Sure.
Because I didn't like the sweetness, caramel, tiny bit of the caramely.
Cloying, like, sweetness all the time.
Yeah. I didn't like that in my beer, so I phased those out, and it just comes over time. and my homebrew Bible. That was one. Oh gosh, Papazian, Charlie
Oh
Papazian.
yeah. The Joy of Homebrewing.
The Joy of Homebrew.
Yeah, still a good book.
Yep.
Still a good book.
Where's that book is here.
So it sounds like you were doing like a meta-analysis of like kind of.
Yep.
You took a look at
Find
what was out
what,
there.
Yep. Find out what's out there.
Yep.
What each
And what they had done.
are made of.
Well, it's interesting that you bring it up, like kind of like that, because my next go-to source is
Designing
Great Beers by Ray Daniels, and that is precisely what the author did. Ray Daniels took the NHC, the National Homebrew Competition, final table entries, so the best of the best for 2 years, and he analyzed every ingredient, like kind of meta-analysis approach by style. So in IPAs, these are all of the grains that were used, and here is the curve for you. Here's the utilization curve.
Yep.
For those ingredients, and he did it with hops. He did it with grains. He did extract versus all grain. Kind of all of these parameters, including like bitterness. How much? What were the top IPAs? What's the bitterness range?
Mash temperatures.
Yep.
All that.
So definitely kind of this meta level approach to data driven approach to beer design. So the best of the best for 2 years at the NHC. This is what people were doing to produce the gold medal beers. And so he gets this kind of like cool style breakdown. We get a little history in the first half of the book on each of these styles, but in the back half of the book, we get kind of an analytical breakdown. In fact, kind of my favorite thing to do is go to each style chapter and go to the last page in the style, and you get the kind of the condensed version, the crib notes.
Right.
Like, if you want to make an award-winning amber ale,
Here it is.
Bitterness to gravity unit, should be here. Your malts, this is the malts you can play with. These are the hops that are most likely. These are the yeast, the water profiles. If you stick with those kind of parameters, you're gonna have a great amber ale. So I look at those and I usually get to say, okay, I've got the 90% of it done. What's the one flavor or two flavors? If it's malt flavor and hop flavor that I get, perhaps I get a yeast flavor too.
Yep. Depends.
But I get to pick one of each of those categories that I want to highlight in my amber ale, right? If I want a sweeter, a sweet finish on my amber, okay, that's going to dictate my malt bill. If I want an earthy herbal hop to go with it, that's going to narrow, here's
Which
my
hop
list
to
of
use
hops.
and where to use it.
Yeah, I was like,
in your
I
recipe.
can see that earthy herbal, I've got Willamette, Goldings, Fuggles, like, I can stay in those kind of confines. And if I want the fruity, estery, English ale yeast of my dreams, look, here's the list I can choose from that are appropriate for that beer. And ta-da! I get to make a beer.
Yeah.
I get to make my own beer, having had 99% of the work kind of laid out for me.
Right.
That's a fantastic one.
Right.
I really like Radio. In fact, I have 3 copies of this book.
Do you?
I don't exactly know how I got 3. I do remember buying it a second time because I wanted one at the office and I wanted one at my desk at home, and I ended up with a third one.
Maybe you should sell it to me. I don't have one.
You don't have that book?
I've never read that book.
Oh my God, it's such a great book. That's such a great book. You should read this book. Here, you should read that book. I got another one. Fantastic. It is. You got brewing data, but it is a beer nerd's dream on that book. So if you don't have that, Ray Daniels Brewing Classic Styles. It is a 2016 volume.
This guy looks
still
like
really good.
Looks like he was an architect.
Ray Daniels, he would go on to create the Cicerone program.
Yep. What did he do before beer?
I don't know
That's what I'm saying.
Like,
He looks like he was an architect.
Yeah, kind of does, doesn't it?
Or a PE, professional engineer. Because that's where you'd get all the calculations and
Oh yeah,
all the
he's
data
spelling
stuff.
out like understanding every style's like key markers like OG, final gravity, IBUs.
His
the
book
color.
looks cool too.
It's a good read. He's a fantastic author, so you're not going to be bored.
It's not dry.
You're not going to be bored reading.
That's
it.
the hardest thing with a lot of beer books is they They like 3/4 of them are about the past history and just what I think about it, and this is this and blah blah.
That's probably the easier part to write. You know, get into like the technical stuff, how to make that interesting. And
Right,
like,
but
oh boy,
I know, but that's what I'm after. I want the technical stuff.
Well, I would love if the technical stuff was like as easy to read as a page in history kind of thing. I think it should be funner to read about these things.
Yeah.
Yeah, I do.
Should be funner.
Yeah.
Fun. Well.
So, yeah, that's kind of how I reverse engineer a style to my own specificity.
Now, you reverse engineered the burr clone,
That
right?
was one I have attempted to reverse engineer.
Now, did you have a beginning recipe for that?
All I had, so in the original one, all I had was their website, and a lot of breweries, if you find your favorite beer, you can do a quick, ask the Google, do a quick search, and sometimes they're going to give you important data about the recipe. So Widmer and like Georgetown's Bodhisattva, some of my favorites, they've published like, hey, here's the malts we use, here's the hops we used. Here's the yeast. They don't tell us the amounts. They don't tell us the percentages. They don't tell us any of those kind of details. But what I found in a lot of that, kind of research, what I noticed was a lot of these are arranging the list of ingredients in kind of a first order importance kind of ranking. Just like you look at it, like, if you look at your nutritional label for any item in the grocery store, the first ingredient on that list is the thing they use the most of, right? Followed by the second most popular,
Are we sure?
Popular. That's the format.
Are we sure?
We're not really
100%?
sure. We're not really sure. But when you look at, if I'm looking at a grain list and it says two-row Munich, Crystal 60, and Victory, I can almost guarantee you that there's mostly two-row, a chunk of Munich, a little bit of Crystal, and a skosh of Victory malt.
Yep.
And so, after you've done this for a hot minute, you can kind of look at those and go
there and see, okay.
Well, if it's 5.5%, that's probably 10 pounds of base malt.
Right, you need that much base malt.
And maybe that's 9.5 base malt, or 9 pounds of two-row and a pound of Munich as a base malt to get you the rest of the way.
You should get more than 5.5% out of 10 pounds.
These are kind of, I kind of have like, I call it the 8-10-12 rule.
Yep.
If I've got 8 pounds.
12.
Yeah, so
I like that.
I think in terms of if I'm making a session beer, regular strength beer, or an imperial, my starting position
8-10-12.
is 8-10-12.
Yep.
So 8 pounds of base malt versus 10 pounds of base malt versus 12 pounds of base malt is kind of, and this is just like I don't do the math. I don't often do the math.
I think
half the time do I put it in the calculator at the end of the day. I just like, if I'm going to make a beer, it's going to be, guess what flavor it is? Beer flavor.
Beer.
Yeah.
Mine was generally just like 10 pounds, 20 pounds for a 10-gallon recipe.
Yeah.
And, for all of my beers. Unless I was going to make a sessional IPA session
and
IPA.
1/2 to 2 pounds of specialties, like you're fine.
Yeah.
It's good ratios. It'll get you, some lighter strength beers, some mid-range, and some heavier hitters. And past that, like if you want, the really big beer, 12, 14, 15 pounds of, like grain.
Yeah,
like,
that'll fit in your mash tun.
If it'll fit in your mash tun, like that's the same. Everybody has that problem.
Right.
Everybody's gonna max out their mash tun at some point.
Yep.
Yeah. What do you do to get over that? Right. Like every brewer has that problem.
Yep.
From guys on 300 hectoliter,
like you were saying, you gotta fill up the
3
mash
gallon.
tun, and then you're gonna make a water.
Absolutely
make a high power
partial
split it into
mash,
two.
partial volume,
Yep.
boil.
Gosh,
this is a thing you can do.
Well, think to yourself, what makes a classic example of the beer you want to make? Like the malt bill.
Right.
Malt's always there, whether it's specialty or other things. The hop bill is going to really define a lot of different styles.
A lot of styles are very defined by their hop.
Yeah.
Like your pales, your IPAs, there's the easy ones.
So whatever beer you want, you just go look at that classic style.
Yeah, kind of those classic, English ambers and browns. That's gonna lead you down the path of English tradition malts. There's one called tradition. That's the thing. Your Fuggles, your Golding. Willamette is a U.S. one, but it's a Fuggle cross.
Yep.
So it's
you know
an easy
where
one. I see a lot
a
of.
good place to play is a brown ale.
I
mean, if you fuck it up,
it's still fucking good.
It could be a stout porter.
Yeah.
But
Or an amber, like
or
you get the default amber.
Yeah. Or it goes back down to an amber.
I've said for years, like in the beginning, all beer was brown.
You know how long it's been since I made a brown ale?
How long has it been since we were?
Years. I don't even know.
Why?
I didn't make one in Mexico.
I like brown. I like.
I made maybe one when I lived in Kirkland. This is prior 2009. Oh my gosh.
I like a nice, clean Northern English with Northern English brown ale, like earthy herbal, hot profile, little ester yeast, and a mild, like a really light hint of roast.
Right.
That's so good.
Mm-hmm.
That's so good. Like a crisp finish on it. Man, that's a good beer. That's a good beer.
When are we gonna brew it?
Mañana.
Mañana. That won't be good for me because I'm gonna have a long night tonight.
Yeah, you're gonna have a Star Wars hangover tonight, aren't you?
Star Wars hangover.
Well, have fun tonight watching the Star Wars.
Star Wars. It's not the Clone Wars.
Revenge of the Sith.
Revenge of the Sith.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah. Have fun.
Number
with that
3.
one. That'll be
Speaking of Clone Wars,
good. Cloning your own beer or your cloning your favorite example.
beer clones.
Yeah, it is a thing you can do.
It is.
We were talking about earlier about doing the homework and looking up your favorite recipe and seeing kind of what they've done, and that's a great way to start putting together a recipe.
Yes.
It
gives you a baseline to start
with. Is
with.
it gonna you're gonna hit it first? Hit the home run first. First time at bat?
Nope.
Probably not. You may find that whatever you put on paper tasted better. That's not at all unusual. I think cloning a beer, like trying to nail it exactly, is nigh on impossible.
Right.
Right. Everybody brewers, everybody's system is different. The bit between your ears, even if you had the exact recipe, the likelihood of you nailing it.
Well, a decent sized brewery, if they brew their beer in their facility, and then they ask their buddy over at the next brewery over, hey, here's my recipe, brew this beer. That beer is going to be different. Yeah.
But it's kind of fun.
It'll be close.
It's fun to do, especially if you're trying to wrap your head around a style. If you find your favorite example and you want to make more of that. So yeah, check it out. Go find up, find your source material, your brewery sites. Maybe they did some interviews. You can find some forum pages.
Yeah, I'm sure somebody on a forum somewhere. Yeah. Go look at Reddit or something.
That's kind of what I had to do for the Burr clone. I didn't have the old website. Didn't have that. Is gone. They've updated it. The old recipe is. So I had to look through. Unfortunately, I didn't have my notes on it, but I had to look through a lot of different things to find that beer. And I'll be closer on the next round for that. I didn't nail it the first time, but that's part of the challenge,
right?
Which is pretty cool,
right? You can do it again, and then you have to drink it again.
Yeah.
So yeah.
So I would say, like, if you're looking at that, prioritize getting the big 3 right. Get a malt bill, hop schedule, and yeast strain nailed down. Sometimes breweries are tight-lipped about yeast, but 90% of them are 1056 or the Chico strain. Like that's a whole ass thing. Sometimes they publish like Bodhisattva, their house strain is like 1098. Like I've researched that, so I you find these little tidbits along the way. The hop bill and hop schedule, those are kind of posted oftentimes. Interesting. You remember the first American pale ale, the pale American ale from
Dale's?
Hale.
Hales.
Yeah, Hales American Pale.
Yes.
That yeast that he brought from Yorkshire would be Y yeast 1332. Now, some say he stole it, some say he was giving it to him. That's fine, but those little bits of nuggets of information you can glean out of history books. Like I knew when I tried to clone that beer that's been lost to the vagrancies of time, I knew 1332 was the right yeast choice for that one. Yeah, I think his original version of that beer, like in '81 or whatever it was a Hallertauer for the hops because that's all you could get.
Yeah,
I'm pretty sure he switched to Cascade at some point because it was the #1 grown hop forever.
Here,
So I'm fairly certain it was. It's a pretty good beer. It's a fucking good beer.
Do you have a clone of that in your?
I do have a clone of that
good.
one. Yeah.
Right, that'd be good. So let's talk about some of the common pitfalls we need to dodge.
Oh boy,
Overcomplicating it.
God, this one I see all the time.
You can't just go to the brew shop and look through the malt room and just pick every one. You can't
pick an ounce of everything.
Yeah. You can't go, I need this, a little bit of that, a little bit of that. It's not like spices in your kitchen if you're making a chili.
Yeah.
You got.
We're not making mole.
No.
We're making.
Be selective.
Yeah.
It's important to be selective because you're gonna way overdo it.
I mean, I know advanced brewer. I know like very experienced brewers who still have very complex grain bills. Some of those are like, well, shit. It's won a gold medal. It's done this. It's done it. So I can't change it.
Right.
It's got its own history now.
I would be really interested.
But it's always interesting.
Take one of the malt ingredients out.
Yeah.
And then really see how much it affects it.
Sure. Because doing a little homework on like what is published about commercial recipes or they've listed things. It's a much shorter 3 to 4 grains and that's it.
Yep. Yeah.
These grain bills with like 8 or 10 different fucking things, like that's kind of weird.
Yeah. Well, I designed the Ox, which is my stout.
Mm-hmm. I remember that beer. I know that beer.
I started with a basic recipe, I think, from Larry's Homebrew Shop in Kent, Washington.
Mm-hmm. I have their sign. The 2005,
you have their sign?
Like the big one looks like a
beer engine?
Like a beer engine handle.
Nice.
Yeah, I've got that sign in the shop. It's
nice.
Pretty cool.
But I started with that, and then I just started, changing it, modifying it. I wanted to add this. I wanted to add that. I changed the when the chocolate malts are at 450. Is that a Lovibond?
Yeah, degrees Lovibond.
450 Lovibond. So I think I bumped up some of my. I tried 350. I think did they come at 320?
So there's usually like an average kind of performance, like Breeze chocolate might be like 320, 350. Range.
Yeah. So I just tried to add higher Lovibond malt in there
to get the color you were after.
Yeah, to get the color, get kind of the roastiness that I was wanting, and then I did change the hops, and over the course of time of brewing it, I would change the hops a little bit, or I would need to brew it and had run out of the hops and be like, what the fuck am I gonna do now? Yeah, I didn't remember I didn't have this hop, and I did that. I changed the 15-minute addition, and it really changed the whole beer.
Sure.
I mean, completely. I'm like, this isn't the beer. I don't like it. So bam, right back.
Yeah.
Right back the way it was. And,
sometimes that's the happy accident though too. Like that,
right?
That Bob Ross special. Like, well, now I have to do it the second time, so it's deliberate.
Well, when I did it the first time and added some specialty grain to it, that was the key right there. I was like, ooh, that turned out really good.
Yeah, I tend towards like keeping your grain bill simple.
Yeah.
Like you've got one kind of like one shot at malt flavor, right? If you're going, biscuity or malty or clean malt flavors, like you have a narrow window of success, and it's hard when you've got like 2 ounces of 10 different things. Which one's the one that's doing it?
Right.
You can have
that's a lot of different iterations. To change.
You could have something that is more than the sum of its parts, but you could also just have muddy water. Right.
I've done that.
Yeah.
I've done like beers where I had all of this leftover little bits. a bit of this and a bit of that and a bit of this. It's like a quarter ounce of this, a half ounce of that. And I end up throwing it all in, I'll just make it, whatever. Yeah, and it turns out like muddy.
Yep. So I like to keep it simple. Write it all down. Jesus, write it all down.
Write it all down. Keep your brewery notes. And there are some resources online. Beersmith.
Mm-hmm. Beersmith, Brewer's Friend. Brewfather. There was one called Bruto. I think they went away. Like there's a host of them.
I used to have Brewmate.
Write them down.
That one.
Yeah.
That one's
write them
no
down
longer
digitally
available.
or the back of your homebrew receipt, like something.
Yep.
Keep your homebrew shop receipts because they'll probably be itemized.
And
there, like, Jesus.
So you're gonna take your recipe on a piece of paper, right? And this is what I did. So I'd have my recipe and I'm following it, and then on the back is when I'm saying what I've done.
Yeah.
So I want to know. Yes, this is what I
Did
accomplished.
a 15-minute edition become a 10-minute edition because you were on the crapper?
Right.
That's
Things
a
like
thing.
that. And I just write it down on the back of the paper. Yep. And then submit that to my book. Put it in the sleeve of my book, and there you go.
So you want to write your own recipe. Here is kind of our like a brief breakdown of areas to focus on.
Right.
First one, I want you to pick your style.
Yep.
You want to make a beer, great.
So
but have
important.
a target. Like
Right.
what is what is the style you want to create? Now I
Well, that's going to help
recognize
you out with everything else we're going to talk about.
it does. I do recognize also that some styles are just suggestions; they're not necessarily rules. But I think if you're trying to create a beer, it's nice to think in terms of style.
It's a baseline to start with.
It narrows your focus down to something that's approachably easier. Yeah.
Yep. So we'll talk about the target stats after you've nailed down that base beer.
Sure.
To your style.
Yeah, you picked it. It's going to give you parameters for gravities, bitterness, your alcohol content, right?
the SRM, the color.
Yep. It could give you style break. It could get your style. Could give you. You could narrow your choices on yeast. It could narrow your choices on hops, and of course malt as well.
Right.
It can also guide your water decisions. Right. If you're brewing a style that is, has a
water profile that's needed.
That is like the Dortmunder extract. I don't think you can't just make any other beer and call it a Dortmunder extract if you don't have that water profile. Because that water profile is what gives you all of those beautiful coppery kind of like flavor profiles in that beer.
Right.
I love that beer. We have talked about it. I
love
know
the
we've
Dortmunder.
talked. We've gushed on this beer.
We need to get one in for a beer 30.
I agree. There you go. Got to take the cat off the studio.
That's right.
Yeah.
So your base malt selection. Choose your main fermentable. It's going to be your 2-row or your
your base
Pilsner.
malts. Yeah, that's 80 to 90% of every beer. Yeah. Is it appropriate for the style? Like now, I recognize
that's the foundation. That's what you start with.
But at the same time, like if it calls for a pale ale malt and you do a Pilsner malt, you're still okay. You're gonna make that choice deliberate.
It'll be a little lighter,
right? And I think those choices should be deliberate. Pale malts, Pilsner malts, ale malts. All of those are talking about a color range. So Pilsner's on the lightest, followed by ales in the middle, and then pales. Technically, the pale malts are the darker ones.
Right.
It's weird. This beer stuff is nerdy and weird, and we recognize that and salute you for like sticking around because this stuff is cool.
Get into it.
Yeah.
Now we got the specialty malts. If you add them,
not every beer.
Adding
But
flavor,
a lot of beers do.
flavor, color,
complexity,
sweetness.
I often tell classes that if we're making cookies, our base malts, that's our sugar, flour, butter.
Sugar, flour,
right?
butter.
Every cookie's got one, but it's our specialty malts That's what differentiates the peanut butter from the chocolate macadamia nut cookie. Da, 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 you know, all
Or the
these things.
do-si-do from
Yeah,
the
God,
Thin Mint.
do-si-do, that's a thing. Yeah,
Oh,
yeah, and do-si-dos are way different than Thin
Isn't
Mints.
that the-
Fuck that.
Isn't that the peanut butter?
Yeah, I hate those ones.
Yes,
I don't
I
like
love
that.
them.
I don't like those peanut butter ones
No?
from Girl Scouts. No, the Girl Scouts mix poorly with peanut butter.
Girl Scouts and peanut butter don't go together.
Yeah, I don't know.
Okay.
When they put real Girl Scouts in the cookie,
Yeah.
it's no good.
Okay, it's not good at all.
I kid. They don't use real Girl Scouts anymore.
Anymore. That's where they all went.
All right, back to the show.
I mean, like you said before, you know, the if you overdo it, the mix could be like more of the sum of all its parts.
Yeah,
You know,
like
it's
too much honey malt or too much
Yeah.
special. Like too much honey malt can be very acidic. Too much special B is weird. A lot if you use too much melanoid malt, like that might be a thing. Like you're gonna want to temper those things. So keep them in range, and that's where like your resources like Classic Styles, Designing Great Beers, the Clone Brew book we talked about earlier on the show. All these are gonna give you an idea of like, oh, where should I be? Maybe. And then once you know, like, if the average usage of Special B is 1/4 pound to 1/2 pound, brew that. Brew it that way. Next, and then when you get to brew it again, if you want to tweak it, you get to try it once and see where you're at. Did it improve it or did it
Mess it
do
up,
something
yeah.
else?
Who
Yeah,
knows?
yeah. You get to, as homebrewers, we get to brew it again. We're not
Right.
limited to a one-off.
I mean, we're going to do this with all of our ingredients.
Sure could.
Yep. Hops. I mean, hops is
Mhm.
hops is pretty straightforward, easy enough to define what you want, where you apply it. You know how to get the flavor.
You got bitterness, you got flavor, and you've got aromas.
Aromas, yeah.
All come from hops. A lot of times in bittering, I'm pretty generic these days on bittering. Like,
Bittering, yeah.
I'm just going to use whatever is convenient to use that I don't have to use a ton of, right? So I might, if I'm doing a 30 IBU beer, I'd like an ounce for the bittering to get me most of the way there.
Right.
But if I'm doing a, say, 67 IBU IPA, which hop will an ounce get me there? Like, so I'm going to go for that higher alpha varietal for that.
Like
But
a
I'm pretty
Chinook.
Chinook or Delta or Bravo or Apollo,
Bravo,
like,
yeah.
like some of those like heavy hitting.
Oh, you don't like Columbus?
Columbus? I'm not a fan of. Columbus is fine drinking. I have a problem with Columbus because I had my head in a bag of Columbus far too many times, and like a pound or more of Columbus at any one time in your face is too much. It hurts. It kind of has this. In quantity, it has kind of this oniony, garlicky gasoline smell.
Yeah, gasoline.
It kind of gives me a
onion
kind
and
of
garlic.
it kind of gives me a headache.
Yeah,
Kind of
it's like a
reminds me of dirt.
fusel.
Yeah.
or some of the terpenes from the oil.
It
aromas.
reminded me of durian fruit. You ever heard of that one? It's like this like Southeast Asian big old clunky fruit. The fruit is so pungent that there are hotels in Southeast Asia or so that say absolutely no durian fruit on the property, or you can smoke all you want, but you cannot have this fucking fruit in here.
Smoke cigarettes,
Because it
but
will
not eat fruit.
because you cannot eat this fruit because we will have to evacuate the building. It stinks so bad.
That's crazy.
And then people just like, well, if it fucking stinks, I'm gonna eat it up. Apparently, it tastes amazing.
But it stinks,
I
huh?
can't get it near my face.
Right.
It's awful.
So next on the list, it looks like we've got our yeast selection.
Oh, yeast, yeah.
I mean, that's easy enough.
Yeah, I mean, if looking at that style is gonna differentiate.
define
Are you
what kind of
making a
yeast you're gonna
German traditional beer or an English or
Japanese style beer.
Japanese? You get into
Yep.
like American style and like, oh fuck it, we'll do whatever we want over here. But there's definitely like
Right.
trend line specific strains. There's a reason.
We used
1056 is so fucking
I
popular.
used the 1056 on my pale ales.
1056, that's SAFL
Yep.
SO5, like
SO5, right?
WLP 001, right?
And then I use 04 for my English,
Absolutely.
English type, different things. Water chemistry, you know, I mean, we pretty much covered that already.
We got a whole show on that. You can
Yep.
check it out. It's episode. I don't know what it is. You'll have to look it up.
8. No, I don't know.
You'll have to look it up, folks. I don't remember what episode it is.
Adjusting the mash pH is
Mash temperature. That's a whole thing.
mash temperature.
Yeah.
Provides at 156, you get a little more body.
A lot more body. What are you talking about? A lot.
A lot more?
It's more than 148.
It is. I like a thinner beer.
I tend towards the drier finishing beer, and I like a lot of the industry is too. Drier finishing is easier to drink a second one.
Yeah. That's going to be a lower temperature, isn't it? The 140.
Typically, yeah.
Single infusion versus step versus decoction. That's another thing that's going to define.
A lot of those variables fall into malt selection.
Yeah.
And I've got
mouthfeel.
Yeah, if I've got, say, a bunch of continental or imported malts from Europe, decoction or step mashing
might have to do a protein rest.
Makes a little bit more sense on some of those. But if it's a domestic American grown or Canadian grown malt, single infusion all the way.
I like to do I like to do a step infusion, single infusion at 147 to 8. And then bring it up to 52 after 20 minutes or so.
I'm too lazy to do any of that. I'm like, I just know I'm good. Yeah. Fermentation, temperature. Goddamn, temperature control is the
most.
It's
important.
the fifth ingredient in beer. Period. Like if your goal is to experiment and learn and to understand. You have to eliminate the variable of temperature during fermentation. If you're trying to excise or figure out if 10 pounds of base malt is the right thing for your beer, for pale malt versus pilsner malt, if you're not nailing the temperature during fermentation, you've skewed the results.
Yep.
So temperature control, do it.
Yep. Unless you're listening to our last episode about Kvike yeast. Boom. But that's a different animal.
We're doing different things out there.
And that works with that one
temperature
yeast
control
only.
but they're controlling for that temperature. There's controlling for the hot side.
Right. It's all built in. It's all built in.
Fermentation conditions, some of those are like, do we primary, do we secondary?
Depends on
cold crashing, diacetyl resting. Those can be very beer specific.
Yep.
If I do a secondary, I need a compelling reason to, like, the compelling reason might be I want to make another beer, and that's my only big fermenter.
Get it out of there and put it in
and that
secondary.
beer's not done. Yeah,
right, because you're not ready to process it and
that could be
bottle or keg it.
Bottling and kegging can those kind of questions.
Carbonation targets.
Those are going to change by beer style.
We just had beer 30. Was it 3 episodes ago, I think, where we over poured our beer 30 beer.
Oh yeah,
and then the carbonation was completely out of mine almost. And I took a sip of yours and same beer,
totally different,
different. Yeah.
So those are when you're designing your beer, you got to think about the fit and finish all the way through the glass.
Right. Some beers are more carbonated, highly carbonated. Some beers are low.
Yeah. So, if it's a highly carbonated beer, if you're on your kegging, you can just dial the pressure up. But if it is in a bottle, that means adding more sugar. So you're going to want to take a look at all those things in your ultimate design.
Yeah.
Where do you want this beer to live?
And anything you're going to do in post fermentation.
Right. Fruits, spices, junk like that. Yep.
Coffee.
I mean, those are going to be definitely recipe specific elements or style specific.
Yep. They're going to be something you need to kind of keep track of. Make sure that you write it all down so you know how much of the fruit you added, or you know how much of the spice you added.
Right.
Yeah, it's very.
So let's break down the kind of like the final word on there.
Good bones. One
Yeah.
One of my favorite breweries these days is Structures up in Bellingham, meaning the bones, the bones beneath the beer.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Proven recipes.
Start there. You got a proven recipe, either brewing class, a well vetted source of information, and that may not be your first run Google search or the Google AI. Might not be that. You're going to want to find your sources that, are telling you the real stuff.
Right.
Like, this is really good beer.
Go find a good book. Go to the homebrew shop and buy yourself the clone book.
I got them.
Or designing the classic styles. It'd be great.
Master your style targets. I would say mastering those before you get into some of the wild stuff is a good.
Right.
It's a good point for, like, if you're trying to design your own beers. Like, if you have a good handle on brown ales, and can differentiate between a Southern English brown and a Northern English brown, you're doing okay. And then you can play with your wild mushroom, English-inspired brown ale with macadamia nut back.
Ooh, sounds good.
That actually does sound fucking making me drool a little bit. Just saying that.
Designing beers right on the show. Brew it in a small batch, too, maybe. Thoughtful changes. Make it deliberate. Write it down.
These days I
take
think
notes
a
of
lot
what you
about.
thought.
I think a
Take
lot
what you
about these
tasted.
little 1 gallon batches. Like doing a little like one-off batch. 1 gallon doesn't cost me a ton. Doesn't have a lot of gear required to do that, and I'm not risking $45 to $60 worth of ingredients.
Right.
It's $10.
If you're going to make a kind of a wild...
If I'm doing something weird,
wild guest beer.
Absolutely. I like those small batch, like, okay, that was cool. Now can I scale it? Can I make it better? Can I do those things? Like, it gives me ammunition to keep doing it.
Right.
I like that.
Well, I mean, being a home brewer, you're kind of used to this anyways. You're gonna make a beer, you're gonna drink it. You're gonna make another one. It's probably gonna be a little different.
Mm-hmm.
You're probably gonna make a different style. So, yeah.
This is the way. This is the way of all things in homebrew. So think about this as you're if you're feeling down about writing your own recipes, or you just don't know how they do it, just think about every master who's ever been out there. They all started someplace. Most of them started as homebrewers, doing the exact same thing, having the exact same feelings, and they got through it. And you can too. I believe in you. God damn it.
Yeah, brew one up and bring it into your favorite brewery.
Hell
Ask the brewmaster. Taste my beer.
Go to brew clubs. Like, find out. Like, there are people out there who speak the language, and they will do it too. I think that's going to be about a wrap for the show today.
Great. What a good show.
Good show. Thanks for sticking around with us.
I know you can do it. I know you can do this. You can design amazing beers.
And you should.
And you should.
And then you should tell me all about it.
And bring them in.
Facebook or come into the shop. Thanks for joining us all. That's
Thank you, everybody.
Tonight. We'll see you next week for another fantastic episode. I don't know what we're going to talk about, but it's going to be beer related.
We'll figure it out.
It's going to be delicious. You'll see.
We'll probably just sit here and BS.
It's happened before.
Like normal.
It's happened before. It can happen again. Thanks, y'all.
All right.
We'll see you next time on The Beer Craft.